Welcome to the very first episode of Conversations for Change this year, 2021. And what a first few days or first week it has been. And we really want to welcome all of you disruptors and policy entrepreneurs, people who want to change the world, people who want to leverage their expertise to make a difference. We want to welcome you onto the show this morning. So, Anya, how are you going?
I'm very good too. Thank you for such a warm welcoming. And everybody, we've been cheering and welcoming everybody into the 2021 saying, hey, lots of adventures. And here we go, lots of adventures indeed. I actually want to welcome everybody that feel bored about what is happening out there in the world and invite them to tell us why they're so bored as well. Because I know that some people are very much invested into following up what's happening, opening CNN all the time, being on top of the whole thing. But then there's people that kind of don't feel being invested into it and don't want to spend some energy on this news. And I really want to dig deeper into what are the reasons out there. Like, why don't you feel connected to what is happening? Are you connected or, want to focus on something completely different? And why? What is that? So yeah, all together.
Well, I will jump in on that right away because I will say, I think the hot topic that everyone is discussing right now is what's going on in the US, and the riot and what happened there and how Trump was inciting this riot. And yeah, I don't feel invested in it at all. So I don't feel emotionally invested in it. I feel it's been several years now in terms of electoral politics. I mean, I've seen through it. And I think if you look at our governance systems or public governance systems from a systemic lens or through a systemic lens, you'd realize that by just focusing on voting people in every 4 years who share your values and who look good to you and feel good to you and feel like you, almost tribally, but even if it's not tribally, even if it's just they share your values and you think they're going to do right, we are just replacing a different leader within a system that is built to allow the accumulation of power at the apex, at the pinpoint. And so even though we might have a good leader now, if we don't change the system, that is make it more participatory and citizens really showing up differently, and from a policies perspective doing that, then we're going to get these cycles of problems going forward. So yeah, I'm not invested in electoral politics. I really would love for us, but you could share your opinion.
No, today, I'm just curious because I know you've been into politics, or at least you've been on that. Not that you've been into politics, but there is a part of your life where you were very close to it. And I just want to know whether that has already contributed to where you are today, because what led you to that belief or to this state of the art where you are today? What's the difference? Why are some people very much just looking into the news and are being emotionally triggered, and other people are just like different?
Well, I would say, I was there. I used to be very, very politically passionate about different electoral options and all of that. And there was a time in my life where I thought I was going to get into formal politics. I think life took over. I moved to England, and so I was no longer connected to the electoral politics in Trinidad and Tobago. And that distance kind of made me, it was good for me because that distance made me look at it more from a bird's eye perspective, as opposed to from, the them and us perspective and being partisan in a particular way. I was already on that track already before, but it really solidified when I took a bird's eye view and started looking at the issues and seeing that, on an issue by issue perspective, the legislation that we needed to get passed, the policies that we needed to see done, sometimes it didn't matter who was in power. It just wasn't happening. And so I said, nah, I prefer to focus on the policies that will change the system, that will give citizens more power. And that's, how I connected with the guest that we have coming on today, Rishi Miraj, who was really, he's an incredible professional in the Caribbean, leading the charge on data privacy, data security, on freedom of information, on public interest rights in terms of information that the public sector and private sector organizations hold. We connected several years ago, and we really tried to build an organization that raised awareness about freedom of information and citizens' participatory rights in the process. And so I'm excited to have Rishi come and join us shortly to talk about what I think is a hot button topic. But if anybody wants to talk about politics and what's going on in the US and all of that, I mean, you could put questions down in the chat and, okay, maybe we will do it. But yeah, we want to talk about WhatsApp today, quite frankly. I do.
Although I kind of have a feeling that these two topics are interconnected. So what is happening with WhatsApp, what is happening with the tech giants, and I look forward for Rishi to actually speak on that too. But it's our data, right, that is kind of being used, and this is what the core problem is going to be probably. I'm assuming that how the data is being managed, how it's being stored, how it's being processed, and then who gets the profit out of it, that is the issue at core. And when it comes to the politics, I mean, we all heard about the Cambridge Analytica, and what is happening today, I kind of have a firm belief that it's no longer going to be the tanks, the guns that are going to be used against the protests, but instead people are actually going to go to the tech companies and say, hey, strip them naked, show me all the data that you have on these people. And then this data is going to be used against the free will or, the freedom of speech or even the freedom to protest and together. I have a feeling that these two issues that we want to discuss today are very much interplexed. Let's see.
Yeah, for sure. Let's bring Rishi in. Hello, Rishi. How are you going?
Hi, Margaret. Hi, Anya. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Or should we have told people Happy New Year, Anya?
Absolutely. I mean, Happy New Year to you as well. I mean, I hope it's going to be much better than 2020. It's not going to be the second episode of it.
Well, it started off on a bang, so I mean.
How was 2020 for you, Rishi?
2020 had its ups and its downs. I think the challenging places for me for 2020 were my kids, because I have two young kids and they've been home since March. I think in Trinidad here, we got our first case on the 13th of March, and since then they've been home.
Oh my God.
Online schooling, so they haven't been to school and everything. So
you all never reopened. We never reopened in Trinidad.
Schools never reopened. No, since they shut down on the 13th or 14th of March, schools have been down. So they've been home since then. I think they've started to make some provisions for like Form 5s or our Standard 5s, that level, to go back in, but at least that control. But the rest of the schools are down. So, that was challenging for me, one. But I think another good part of 2020 was that I was kept busy, because I actually started working on a data protection project for an organization based in the Caribbean on setting up a data protection program for them. They're one of the more proactive organizations I've seen that realize that, we need to get in front of this data privacy laws and things that's happening within the Caribbean, within the world. And I'm doing some work with them right now on setting up their own data protection program. So that's kept me busy and that's kept me going.
Cool. Are you getting a lot of support from the school? Sorry to focus on that, because I have my own issues with the school thing, but homeschooling.
School, no, it has been challenging, because I think one of the early problems is that the adaptation. What do we do? How do children continue to learn and stuff like that in this environment? So there were challenges with regards to how we got the content from the school, how the children learn. And my children are very young, so they're still in primary school. So there's still that level, I think, of student-teacher interaction that is required and needed for them to be able to learn. And I think this week, or next week coming, we're actually going to be finally starting online classes with them for a particular period of time. So that hopefully should help. But I think this has put a lot of strain on schools, on teachers, but also on parents, because you have to manage. You're working from home because some parents were home. I work from home. My wife works from home. So managing working from home, but also make sure your child still continues to do their schoolwork and everything like that, and keep that level up. So that definitely has been and still continues to be a challenge that we're facing. I see you're probably going through the same thing too.
Yeah, however, today was the first day of school here in the UK, and oh my God, the support this time off the chain. Jackson has been doing his work. It's been incredible. I just go and check, boom, boom, boom. The teacher's there right through their breaks, but he's on it, and he knows he has to put his work in at a particular hour. And, I mean, this is much better than the support that we had before. And so I'm just grateful. So I can have this conversation with you all without a kid running in.
Yeah, I think the children have also been able to pick up quickly. I mean, like I said, I have two small Jackson. I know Jackson's also young, but they've been able to embrace the technology so quickly.
Yeah, for sure. It's not that, but having a wild kid who just wants to run around and all of that, and if you have meetings and have work to do, who's supervising? Anyway, gosh, Rishi, we were talking about the U.S. election before you came in. What's your take on what happened, a couple of days ago in the U.S.? What's been happening?
I'm not surprised. I've actually been, I think, since about August or June last year, I've been actually engaging myself in right-wing media spin and actually looking at the content, listening to them on their YouTube channels, the different speakers, apart from the Fox News, which is now being lambasted. And the other news networks like that, OAN and Newsmax, and then the YouTube channels and this thing. I think, yes, what we saw on Tuesday was coming. On Wednesday, it was coming and it came. I actually told my wife about it, and she's like, no, that's not going to happen. And then when it happened, she's like, wow, you really said it was going to happen. Because there is this, I won't say alternate reality, but there are people out there who've been fed certain narratives, again, based on their identity, based on what they want to believe, what they want to feel. And that has been fed to them through different medias, and that's all they consume. That's all they see. That's all they hear. That's all they want to talk about. Even when you go on the different chat rooms that they have and stuff like that, and you see the content that's coming up, it's believed. And if you try to offer counter narratives and say, well, maybe something else, they're like, no. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, this is what I know. This is the truth. This is what the people who I trust have told me. And I think that has spurred what was coming. It's been bubbling for a time, and I think what we saw this week was the culmination of it. And it's not over yet. There are those, when you go on to the right-wing media, they're saying this is just the beginning of what they term the revolution.
Wow.
And it's not going to stop. So you're thinking, okay, Trump is out, Biden gets sworn in on the 20th. There may be some lull, but no, it's still there, and it's still bubbling under the surface.
And you see, you made a point that I think links to what Anya was saying earlier. It's, the use of our data to create echo chambers that cause people just to be getting one set of news and one set of feedback just based on your interests, using our data to do that. That is part of, what is contributing to this problem. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I think if you look at the different social medias that exist, Facebook and all those different mediums, what they do is they look at what you like, what you follow and stuff like that, and then they feed you content on that. So they feed in you what your biases are and everything else. And what we're now seeing is that there's now what we call alt tech, or alternate social media networks that are now popping up and coming up. I don't know if there's something called Parler, which is now is like a competitor to Facebook and Twitter, for those on the right side, on the conservative side.
What's that one? What's it called?
Parler, P-A-L-E-R, I think it is. That's the proper spell. But you can do a search on it. So for example, what they've said is that Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they are all part of big government, of Big Brother, and they're all controlling what we hear and what we see, and they try to censor us. So if we put up information that there was fraud in the elections or this and that, because it doesn't fit within what these media companies say it should be, they censor it. So what they've begun is that they've actually begun to develop their own alternative technology, social media platforms that they can go on and have their chats and have their, spread their information to who they want to spread the information to. So, they're now coming off of what we think is the norm, the Facebooks and everything else, and they're going elsewhere. And you're right, they're actually building on what your biases are, and you're feeding new information on that on a regular basis.
And it's not only that. I mean, reading Tools and Weapons from Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, right? You can easily see that there has been a lot of cases in front of the court already where it was decided that Microsoft either needs to go and access their servers and provide them with the data, and those data being literally the conversations that we are having on the devices that they have control over. I think that is something that kind of needs to be decentralized. Like, there should not be a centralized server or a storage of all this information. I should be the sole owner. I should be the one providing all this data to the authorities if so needed. I kind of have a feeling that it's not right to have such large monopolies out there, and it's even harder for us, like the end users, to know what the alternative is. It's even harder for us to migrate from one platform to another. Like, now a lot of people are asking whether we should be migrating from WhatsApp now that they have been changing terms and conditions. And my question is, where to? I mean, people are saying Signal, but Signal is far from providing all the functionalities that we are now used to having displayed on WhatsApp. So it's a bit of a battle between all these providers, or maybe not even a battle, because simply there's no alternatives, or at least they're not known to us. What's your opinion on the WhatsApp, by the way?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think just a couple of days ago, I actually got a message from WhatsApp saying terms and conditions are changing, privacy policies are changing, so you have to look at these things. And it's interesting because I think what Facebook is, remember, WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. Mm-hmm. So Facebook owns WhatsApp, doing Instagram, Facebook Messenger. I think what Facebook is trying to do now, from a business perspective, but you also have to keep in mind, in the back of your mind, these are businesses, they're profit. Mm-hmm. So they run for profit, they run for making money. They're not run for making you feel happy and nice. At the end of the day, it's about making money. And what Facebook is trying to do now is utilize the different mediums and channels that it has, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, and the data that they collect, or the data they have access to be able to share it and store it and use it among themselves. And what's interesting is that most people are always concerned about, well, they probably want my data that can be seen, your name, your email address, your contacts and messages. But it goes far beyond that. And then the crux of it comes on your metadata, the data that you don't see, your location that's shared over the time, the little mix and bytes behind the data that you don't really see or know. But a lot of machine learning and AI can use those metadata together with whatever other data that they have and have access to be able to crunch the numbers and create a certain image of you. So I think what we're seeing now is that Facebook, from a business perspective, is now looking to see how we can now harvest, I think that's the proper word to use, harvest data that we have within our ecosystem, WhatsApp, Instagram, and everything else, to be able to. And what they'll say is that, well, we're doing it to provide a better service for you. We're doing it to improve security. We're doing it to keep out frauds and stuff like that. But that's the tip of the iceberg. But when you go underneath the iceberg is, what other things are they using data for that you don't know? Who else are they sharing the data with? And like you mentioned, government. Are they going to be sharing the information with government without me knowing, what information government is having access to, or they being able to tap into it? And that creates a question and a query. And if you actually look at WhatsApp's privacy policy, for example, you'll realize that there are different privacy policies. So the policy that they'll have for me, I'm in Trinidad, will be totally different from the policy that they'll have for you guys who are in the economic, Margaret no longer in the EU, but...
So each of us will have different relationships.
Exactly. But for the policies that are related to those who are in the EU or the economic, agreement area that they have within the EU, there's a more specific policy, and of course those policies are a lot more stringent because of GDPR and the GDPR laws and stuff like that. So they have to adhere to the GDPR laws. Even if you look at Facebook, WhatsApp again, they have a separate privacy policy for Brazil, because Brazil just last year implemented their own GDPR type data protection laws and stuff like that. So and those things will have a lot more protection. So, for example, if I read the policy notice last night again, and the policy notice that it has for me is very generic, very long, very legalese, very difficult to understand for those who don't understand it. But when you read the privacy policy for the EU and those who are in the EU, for example, it's broken up, easier, simpler, simple language, easy to understand. You know what they're using the data for. They follow all the steps under GDPR. They also have underneath it an email address that you can send a request to the data protection officer if you have queries and stuff like that. But under my own, it's generic, it's basic, it's simple. So again, it depends on the territory that you're on and the laws that you have, how the policy is also going to be structured.
Which brings us to what we are trying to do at Future Law, what you are trying to do in the Caribbean. What's happening with data protection policy in Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean?
Well, I think over the last 2 years, we've seen a change in the way that governments, I think a good starting point would have been the Cambridge Analytica issue that you all spoke about earlier, and that we saw the impact of big data and what big data can do to be able to use to manipulate people's viewpoints or suppress on different things like that. And we've started to see, even within the Caribbean, a movement or a change in the way governments are approaching. I think, one, because of Cambridge Analytica, two, because of digitalization. A lot of countries are realizing you need to go digital. I think COVID-19 has more or less upticked, your approach to going digital. And for example, in Barbados, in 2019, Barbados actually passed their Data Protection Act in 2019, and it's more or less based on the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And just last year, they actually put out an ad on their newspapers to recruit information commissioner temporarily in Barbados, because Barbados now wants to move towards using e-identity and e-government services. And to do that, you need to have a proper framework in place. So Barbados has slowly been moving towards implementing their data protection laws. Jamaica last year passed their Data Protection Act. And that's interesting, because if you look at the Jamaican case, for example, I think in 2018 or 2019, the Jamaican government wanted to introduce an e-national identity card. And part of that was the government collecting data on citizens. But they had a Data Protection Act, but it wasn't fully implemented or anything like that as yet. And it was challenged in the court. And the Supreme Court in Jamaica actually ruled that the e-identity card that the government wanted to enact was illegal because of different areas. And one of the main areas they spoke about was because of privacy, and there wasn't that proper framework or foundation to protect people's privacy, to govern how you use the data, how you collect the data, how people can get their recourse if they want to challenge that kind of data. So that program was scrapped, and Jamaica just in May of last year passed their own Data Protection Act revised, again based on GDPR. So GDPR has now become like the benchmark gold standard model that Caribbean countries are using. And the government, I think just in December last month, put out a full page ad seeking to recruit the office of the Information Commissioner in Jamaica to set up the office. So Jamaica and Barbados are moving ahead. Trinidad, what we've done, although we passed our law way back in 2011, I was part of that team that passed the act. We never fully implemented it. And the government has now, I think they've hired a consultant on board, and they're looking towards revamping, revising the act. Again, my assumption is they're going to be using the GDPR model to be able to make amendments to legislation. So slowly within the region, and Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad, like the big boys in the Caribbean, in terms of what they do, other countries normally follow. You're slowly seeing that citizens and people are becoming aware of data that these big companies have, but also data that government, I think that's the big thing, data that government now also has on you, and data that government uses on you. I think because of that awareness that we're now seeing people asking certain questions about government. I just had this issue just last year with my daughters in school, for example, where we saw that the school was coming to us and asking us for a bunch of information that they said the Ministry of Education wanted. And on that list of information that they requested, they wanted to know the ethnicity of the child. They wanted to know other information like blood type and stuff like that. that we were sent to the school and school was sent to the ministry, and why would I just I went off the chain. And I was like, well, I can understand certain kind of information you want, which the school already has because we provided it before that.
Mm-hmm.
Why this other information? Why do you want this information for? So I actually wrote to the CEO, the chief education officer, and the PS in the Ministry of Education, listen, I think this is intrusive. I don't see how knowing my child's ethnicity or blood type and stuff like that, or where parents working can lead to assist, at least in the educational point of view. So I challenged it. And other people began to, I did a big post on Facebook and stuff like that, and people began to challenge and say, well, yeah, why do they really want this information? And then the ministry eventually backtracked and they said, well, no, we don't want those kinds of information. And they kind of narrowed it down to what they wanted to focus on. So we're seeing now that people are becoming aware of their rights and of the kind of information that government wants to collect from you.
Yeah, that's great, Rishi, and that's great policy entrepreneurship on your part in terms of what you did. I want to circle back to WhatsApp because I'm looking at time and there's just a couple more questions I know Anya and I do have for you on those WhatsApp terms and conditions. So I want to know, could we access our metadata from WhatsApp? Because WhatsApp and Facebook are going to be collecting all of this data now. And using it for their aims, with their, selling it to businesses and all of that. Can we, as the user, if we sign up for those terms and conditions, can we access our metadata?
Well, what they're saying, so for example, if you're in the EU, and again, it depends on the privacy policy in the jurisdiction you're. They'll obviously want to say, well, we're going by the laws that govern your jurisdiction. So, for example, if you're in the EU, or even if you're in England, because England has a Data Protection Act that's more or less mirrored on GDPR, although I know their movements now to amend it, but that hasn't happened yet. Right. So there are certain rights enshrined here. One of the rights is you have the right to access data held upon you by the organization. You have the right to restrict processing. You have the right to be forgotten, for them to delete it and stuff like that. So there are certain rights that are enshrined to you in those jurisdictions. So I see no reason why you can't request access to your data that the organization has on you, including your metadata, because I'm pretty sure a good argument could be told that, well, the metadata is linked to the data that you have. Although they will say, well, the metadata is just nonsense. You don't really need to get that kind of data. But for me, because there's a link between metadata and the actual data that people see on the front, I don't see no reason why you can't make a request to get access to that data in those countries where the laws allow it. But in countries like, for example, where I'm in Trinidad right now, because we have no laws in place or no laws enacted to allow for access, there may be some restrictions, or although I may be able to request it, they may say, well, we are under no legal obligation to provide you certain type of information. So we'll be able to give you the information like your name, your contact data, and stuff like that. But everything else beyond that, we are under no legal obligation to give.
Which is why it's so important for us to get the Data Protection Act implemented and really, enforced in Trinidad and Tobago and in other countries.
Although there's one thing that persists on my mind, and that is that we are very much focused on the protection of the data, instead of really the use of that data, because I do believe that data could be used for benefits of ourselves. Like, I can simply see that, if they are gathering all the patterns about my history, then it might become very easy to predict what my future might look like, or at least provide me with variety of options that I have in the future based on how I behave in the past. And those are all the things that I would love them to provide to me. Call it a metadata or basically just the personal data they have on me. I would love to have that becoming a reality as well. And I don't see that happening much often. More or less, data is being used for advertisement. And we don't even have, the moral advertisement happening out there. Like, having some ethical standards on what is being advertised to me or whatnot. It's merely just, retargeting of what I previously liked on Facebook or what I've searched on Google. I don't think that's enough. I would love to even pay for something that I would love to see more often happening on my feed, for example. Let's say I would love to focus or follow up the news about the ecosystem, the environment, the progression that has been made with ecocide, let's say. And that's simply not out there because these types of projects or these types of movements don't really have enough money to invest so much into the advertisement itself. And yet the metadata could simply suggest that these are the things that I should be notified about because of what I've done in the past with all the search instructions or all the search things that I've done on my browser. It's like, what is the metadata? Could it be really beneficial for us? And is there any projects out there that are working on these types of things, or is it just business as usual? So we're going to use it for advertisement.
Well, I think that there is some changes. So, for example, the project I'm working on with this organization, they've begun to see the benefit of using data in a way that, because they collect a lot of data on clients throughout the Caribbean, because they have client bases throughout the Caribbean, both Dutch-speaking Caribbean, Spanish-speaking Caribbean, and English-speaking Caribbean. They realize that they now want to use technology and want to use the data that they have in a way that allows them to better serve their client in terms of needs now as well as future needs that they would have. But what they realize is that they began to work on the project that, listen, this may also impact on people's privacy. And we need to make sure that we are doing this properly, and that we also need to make sure that while we're doing this, that we're able to protect people's privacy, and we walk that fine line between allowing to give people better services and give them things that they would need. Like, you're right, there are certain things that may be coming out that may be of interest to you or may be valuable to you that you would want to know, and you would want that data to be useful. So data should be looked at with a bad eye and saying, well, listen, all data is bad and these companies collecting the data using it for a bad way. But I think organizations that are doing this need to realize that we need to balance between what we want to use data for and data protection of people's privacy, and being able to put things in place to be able to have guardrails in place. I think so. That's one example in the Caribbean where we're seeing that. So I think that's where we need advocacy. We need social CSOs, civil society organizations, and other organizations to come out
and
and advocate.
professionals, every professional,
Everyone. I mean, it touches
every
on everything.
citizen. Once
Exactly.
you're passionate and you do the work to learn, to develop deep knowledge in your particular field, you can become a voice for this kind of thing. I'm looking at the time, but I just want to jump in on this point that you all are raising. It's not. I don't think that the argument is let's not allow companies to get or use our data, because there are opportunities for us to enhance the way we are living by using our metadata, by using this thing we can't get on a day-by-day basis for ourselves. So, for example, this health crisis that we're going through, I'm sure metadata can be used to help us to solve some of the challenges that we are facing in this health crisis. So data can be used for the public good. And so it is about how do we use data for public and personal good while protecting against the abuses. And so what is your advice? I see we have several comments. I just looked and saw several comments, but I don't think anyone is asking a specific question, but Angel just shared something, so we have to read that. But I do want to get your advice to everyone who's listening, Rishi, on should we be on WhatsApp? Given these new terms and conditions, I guess people in the EU, as you said, have some sort of protection. In the UK, maybe Barbados and other countries. But if you have no policy protection, legal protection in your country, should we be on WhatsApp? Do you think, much ado about nothing, stay on WhatsApp because of the ease and convenience and all of that? What's your take?
Well, I think it comes down to an individual choice. You should be aware of what WhatsApp is doing and where WhatsApp resides in. So like I said, WhatsApp resides in Facebook. So you need to know that, because if you have an issue with Facebook and the way Facebook deals with people's personal data and privacy, then obviously probably you should get off WhatsApp, because obviously WhatsApp being connected to Facebook, that data, whatever data you share or people share with you and you communicate, your chats, your media that you share, it's going to be shared with Facebook one way or the other. So if you have an issue with Facebook on the whole, then probably you should be off WhatsApp. And we now see that there are several, pop-ups up there like Signal, Telegram, and other things that could be used. May not be perfect, but may not be on the ecosystem of Facebook. So if you have a question with Facebook, be aware of it and probably get off WhatsApp. I think, again, it's the individual choice. You need to know what the policy is. You need to read it properly, take your time. Don't just scroll along and say, okay, click, I accept and move on. But need to be aware of what's going on. I think, forums like this and doing simple searches online, you'll be able to see exactly what's going on. But again, it comes out an individual choice. Me, I am on WhatsApp. I use WhatsApp. A lot of people I know use WhatsApp, but I also have other messaging services that I use, like Signal, Telegram, for example, to be able to share. So I don't share everything on WhatsApp. So again, it comes down to a user's individual preferences and stuff like that.
Hey, nice to see you, Sarah and Anil and Angel and Vinda and all of you with your comments and all of that. One thing I do want to share now is a resource that everyone can use. It was created by Mark Williams, sorry. And he has done a secure messaging apps comparison so that you can look at, Messenger, iMessage, Signal, Skype, Telegram, WhatsApp, and several others that, I never even heard of. I've put the link beneath right now, and you can go and see he has compared several of the messaging apps and the different rights and ranked them for a bit. So to learn more about the different options that you have, you can go to www.securemessagingapps.com. I would love to continue talking, to be fair, but I'm looking at the time and I know we don't have the appetite for the much longer conversations. But Rishi, any final remarks you want to make about this issue of WhatsApp's terms and conditions, new terms and conditions, or data privacy on the whole? Any programs you have coming up, anything people can plug into?
Well, I think people need to be aware of the data they put out there. I always tell people, be aware of the data that they put out there. If it doesn't really need to be placed out there, then don't put it, whatever social media platform you use and stuff like that. So you need to be aware. You need to look at your, read the policies, understand exactly what the data is being used for, ask questions and stuff like that. I'm actually now, as we're talking about this, I've actually been going to be rolling out later on this year, I think in the second half of the year, online data protection masterclass, understanding data protection laws. And I'm actually now starting a blog on privacy made simple. And then I'm going to be using my Instagram page. So you can check out my Instagram page. Do a search for me, Rishi Maharaj, on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And I'm actually going to be doing a simple video blog, maybe 5 minutes or so or less. This basically breaking down what privacy is about and the privacy law. So it's called Privacy Made Simple. So I'm going to be putting that out there very soon in different various video blogs. So people can understand exactly what does it mean, because when you read privacy law, it can be kind of complex at times, or you don't know exactly what's going on. So I'm trying now to break it down simple for both people in organizations to understand, as well as normal people day-to-day to understand what it means for me as an individual, and what I can do to ensure that my data is used properly and I share my data in a proper way.
That sounds amazing. We need to spread the news about it, about privacy, and bring it closer to the people. I know a lot of times it's just long text that nobody really wants to go through. And one time I read that if it takes longer than brushing your teeth once a day, then nobody's going to go through it. And knowing the fact that it takes more than 3 hours a day, if you would have to read all the privacy policies from all the projects, from all the apps that we are daily using, that's simply not happening. So bringing that topic closer to us and really just knowing, what the important part of the privacy policy actually is, I think that's going to be amazing.
I think just last year I saw a New York Times article where somebody just quickly ranked the different privacy notices of different companies and stuff like that, and then ranked it on a scale of educational acumen you would need to be able to understand it. And the majority of the privacy policies, I think about 70% of them were at the stage where you need to have a degree, a first degree or a master's, to be able to read and understand the types of privacy policy. So that in itself shows, the way that they say we're transparent, but You can't understand it. If you can't understand it, it makes no sense.
We need people like you, Rishi.
We have people like Rishi. Yeah, but Rishi, thank you so much for coming in and plugging in and sharing with us a little bit about what these new terms and conditions mean for us. I mean, I am still very concerned about it because Future Law conducts a lot of our business on WhatsApp. We have all of our network communities of practice on WhatsApp, but then also it's really more about the personal part of WhatsApp. Because to me, you would communicate personally, very, very personally on WhatsApp to your closest friends and family, things that you would never put on Facebook. You would never put it on Facebook. And now we have this situation where there is going to be that cross-sharing of information between those platforms. It concerns me. So even as a business person that uses this network, uses, this, it's of great concern. So I know it must be of great concern to others as well. We encourage everybody to, if data privacy protection, data privacy is an issue that you really feel is one of the issues that you want to apply your expertise and apply your time and energy toward learning more, deepening your knowledge, building a network around increasing the protection of your data in your country, plug in with us at futurelaw.io. Rishi's part of our network community of practice on data privacy and policy. And he has the upcoming masterclass this year and lots of other stuff that we can do to support you in this particular field. Yeah. Anya, any closing remarks?
While you were talking, just one thought actually crossed my mind, because what I see happening in practice already is that for different types of discussions or relationships that we are forming with people, I use different apps. I kind of believe that this is going to be the future that we're going to see. So if WhatsApp really wants to be making the money, and if they want to use my data for business, then I'm literally going to be using it for business as well. For example, with my family, we are having a chat on Viber. We might even migrate to Signal, who knows? On Signal, for example, I have different conversations happening with my clients because it really is a secure app. With a lot of crypto, for example, we are having Telegram, just because it, again, offers the encryption. And perhaps this is going to be happening in the future. We're going to be actually becoming very picky, very selective about what types of relationships we're having on what type of an app. Based on what type of a security the app is offering. So it's no longer just going to be a basket of all the messaging apps. It's literally going to be many different baskets based on what type of a privacy is being offered to us. Who knows? But just like a closing remark, that's my final thought probably on the topic.
And I think you dropped a mic there because you helped me make my decision. I thought that was great. Right. So I stay on WhatsApp with the business issues.
Different apps for different.
And then I take all my private stuff off of WhatsApp. Yeah. And, have my little private groups with my family and my friends off of WhatsApp. Right. Anya has provided the solution.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, the only hiccup in that, Anya, is that hopefully that big tech doesn't want to come on buy off Signal or buy off Telegram and stuff like that. And that's the problem that we see the US is now facing in terms of wanting to demonopolize Google and Facebook and stuff like that, because they're saying that because of this monopoly, you now can have restrictions in terms of, they own everything and stuff like that. So that we also have to guard against, these takeover by these big tech companies of these other smaller ones that are providing great services.
Very true.
Very true. Yeah, thanks so much, Rishi. Guys, we're going to have to end this broadcast. We thought it was going to be less than 30 minutes. It's now going on 45, but it's been really rich with, I think, the kinds of guidance that we need, right, to help us navigate, because I think we have until February 8th to make the decision whether we accept those terms and conditions. So guys, who are plugging in and watching, who are watching now and who may be watching after, really think about what you use WhatsApp for. And if there are things that you would not post on social media, in terms of Facebook and Instagram and all of that you would do on WhatsApp, then you really should think about migrating some of that stuff into a more secure apps. Look at the link that we have below for www.securemessagingapps.com. Go there and you get some guidance as to some of the most secure apps. We are not getting any affiliation fee or promotional fee for any of the apps that may appear to be more secure in that link. But yeah, have a great weekend, guys, and see you all in a few weeks. We want to have this show once every 2 weeks or so. Yeah? Okay. Thanks again, Rishi.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.